Good afternoon and welcome to episode 17 of Aico TV. I'm Alex Scarmston.
And I'm Holly Moore.
And today we're back in the Aico studio. Just a quick update, we are now moving to an episode every 2 weeks due to our mobile training and demonstration units being back out on the road. They came back into force a couple of weeks ago, and we're lucky enough to have some footage and some photos from our regional specification managers using the units to do some training and catch up with their customers. Let's take a look.
Hi, you're watching Aico TV. I'm Steve Bully, Regional Specification Manager for Aico for the South West. It's day 2 of the mobile unit tour after 15 months of hibernation. We're at Edmonton's in Torquay today. Got a busy day booked in. We're with Darren Sandicott today, the buyer at Edmonton's Torquay. Darren, just tell us a bit about the branch and kind of the areas that you service.
Yeah, Torquay, English Riviera, sun shining once again. Yeah, we do a lot of the local house associations around here.
Yeah.
Torbay, Teambridge, that sort of area. A couple of the big boys are down with us, so we do a lot with you. So.
Fantastic. Big supporter of Aico. How do you see the training benefiting your customers today around the new products, things like that?
I think it's always good to get guys sort of trained up on this sort of thing. It's one of them products where everyone's using it, so the more you know about it, I think it's a benefit to everyone. So, especially for the housing association, and to be fair, the guys are more and more interested in the sort of training side of things these days. You find that people want to know about what they're actually installing, whereas before it's just sort of get it on the wall and away you go, whereas now people actually take that time to do it, so I think it's a really good idea. Yeah,
and we're going to get the staff on as well, have a look at what's going on.
Later on.
I think it's all going to go smoothly. We've had a bit of a hiccup with the bacon rolls. They started flapping, didn't they? When you put an order in for sort of more than 5, but it sounds like it's in hand.
It's in hand, yeah.
Brilliant. Should be a good day. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to our brand new compact mobile unit. We're here today at CEF Dartford Bridge, welcoming our second session of trainees.
Again, covering domestic premises within the whole of the UK, but you can see there the scope's been widened to include caravans and boats as well.
Good morning, Dan Thomas from Aico here, Regional Specification Manager for Wales. Today we're in sunny Newport, South Wales, where we'll be giving expert installer training to the 40 DLO gas and electrical engineers for Newport City Homes. As you can see in the background, we're at one of their sites with our mobile training unit. We're just setting up now. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Looking forward to a cracking day. We have several sessions booked through the day, and we're going through standards and regulations, siting, installation, and also some of the new technologies that are out there, so SmartLink and the Gateway Portal and the like. So we'll also be talking about our new environmental sensors, which will be coming soon. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting couple of days. Really looking forward to it.
So it's been great to see our mobile training and demonstration units back out on the road. If you're interested in becoming an expert installer, please visit our website and fill in a registration form.
Yes, and when you become an expert installer with Aico, this gives you the opportunity to gain access to the Aico installer community online. Here you can share knowledge and claim rewards by completing additional modules, training modules. You get given points and points win prizes. So please sign up to our expert installer training. And here's what's coming up on this week's episode. Firstly, we have Leeds Smart Home Healthy Home project with our National Sales Manager Daniel Little.
Then we will take a look at how COVID-19 has impacted the industry with our Operations and Learning and Development Manager Lee Duffy.
Then Tina Mystery, our Relationships Manager, sits down with Lord Porter of Spalding.
And lastly, we'll finish up with an FAQ, which will be how to remove a product from your gateway system.
To kick off this week's episode, our National Sales Manager Daniel Little sits down for a panel discussion on Smart Home Healthy Home, which is a project taking place with Leeds. Daniel is joined by Richard Bould, Technical Manager for New Builds at Yorkshire Housing, Daniel Hardy, Project Lead, Housing of the Future at Leeds City Council, and Jess Kuznia, Innovation Analyst at Yorkshire Housing, and our very own Jordan Toulson, Project Manager at HomeLINK. They'll be discussing the project, what they've been up to, what the project's about. This is a 2-part segment. This is the first part, and the second part will be shown in 2 weeks. Let's take a look and see how the panel discussion got on.
Hello, I'm Daniel Little, National Sales Manager, Aico HomeLINK. Welcome to the next instalment of Smart Home, Healthy Home project. I'm joined today by Dan, Richard, Jess and Jordan. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Hopefully we're going to have an interesting conversation which is being recorded for Aico TV. First of all, I'd just like to pass over to Jordan, who's going to give us an overview of the project before we link into some questions to the different stakeholders of this project.
So we're here talking today about the Smart Home, Healthy Home project with Leeds City Council and Yorkshire Housing. It's a project that is based on installing environmental sensors into around 200 homes in West Yorkshire, looking at the temperature, humidity and carbon dioxide, and we're also looking at connecting in the SmartLink gateway as well, and looking at what data that collects and what insights we can gain from that to improve the well-being of the residents of both RSLs and the benefits that it can bring to the maintenance patterns for the organisations as well. We're halfway through the project. We're looking to finish in December, and yeah, it's a really exciting time. We've got some really good early results from the project, and the residents have been really engaged, which has been great to see as well.
Thank you, Jordan. As we move into our first question, I'll just ask for the guests just to provide a quick introduction to themselves and also their organisations. So, having heard the overview of the project, it'd be great to hear about the strategic priorities of the project from your perspective. So if we can start with you, Dan.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Daniel Hardy. I work in the Digital Information Service at Leeds City Council, and I'm involved in a team who look at things around smart cities and innovation. Leeds City Council has 56,000 properties, so a big provider of social care in the city. And I think our strategic priorities are probably very similar to lots of organisations where we are trying to improve the satisfaction of our customers, give them the best, our tenants should I say, give them the best experience they can have, but also looking at energy efficiency, how we can improve those properties, how we can keep improving them, and understanding how we can move away from a very reactive service and thinking more about how we can get in there and, if problems arise, get them dealt with before they become a major issue. So trying to be more proactive and using data to inform decisions that we take.
Cool, thank you, Dan. And Richard, from Yorkshire Housing's perspective?
Yeah, I'm a technical manager at Yorkshire Housing in our new build team. We've got 15,000 homes across the region, and very much what Ian said, our strategic priorities, two of the main ones are great customer experience and homes and places to be proud of, and yeah, very much we're looking at our processes, trying to get the customer offering so that they can access our services any day of the week, any hour. And looking to self-serve as well. So it really complements when you've got the smart technology and you know what's happening in the property. You've got, if you've got parts failures, you know immediately what part you go into that home with to do a replacement. We know that customers only want us in the home to come and do repairs. They don't want us in and out doing inspections. So the move to preemptive maintenance and understanding what's happening in the home rather than waiting for something to fail, it certainly offers us a good opportunity.
Interesting. And Jess, is there anything you'd like to add to Richard's answer?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Jess. I'm an Innovation Analyst at Yorkshire Housing, so I'm the project coordinator for the HomeLINK project within Yorkshire Housing. So I sit within the innovation team at Yorkshire Housing, and we're a fairly new team. We've been around for about a year now, and our sort of main tasks are to bring in new technology into the business and sort of look at new ways that we can be working. I really just want to echo some of the things that Dan and Richard have already said. Yorkshire Housing is at the very sort of early beginning of the IoT journey, and we're still in that phase where we're looking at different technology and what could serve us the best, but it is looking at those parts. We're moving to a preemptive service where we're doing proactive repairs. It's going to save us money. It's also going to give our customers a better experience, and also how we can better plan for how we maintain our properties.
Cool, thank you, Jess. I think the common theme there is how social housing providers are able to use technology to firstly save money, but more importantly provide a better service to their residents, and also ultimately a healthier home, a home they can be proud of, I think, is what they say at Yorkshire Housing. Next, it'd be great to understand what are the key things you're considering as part of your smart home future plans. First you, Dan.
So I think at a very basic level, the initial thing is thinking about how do we improve the internal environment in our properties, looking at temperature, condensation and the problems that those can cause. But then we want to think, and we know that if we can make the internal environment better, we'll improve the health of the tenants. But we also know that some of our tenants have very specific health conditions. So once we have that connectivity in place and we know it's working, we want to think about what we can do for those tenants who have, you know, chest complaints, those kind of things. So it's a general improvement, but then specifics for tenants who really need more support on top of that.
Yeah, interesting. And same question for you, Jess.
Yeah, so I think so we're just kind of getting started on the journey, so we're kind of very much still exploring, but I think for us it's a part of how we can make energy efficiencies within our homes, so looking at smart technology around that. It's also touching on some of the things that Dan's talking about, using environmental sensors, which is why it's so great to be part of this HomeLINK project, where we can look at the conditions for mould and damp and better maintain our properties and the internal environment for our tenants.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it's the environment of someone's home is very important, and how it can have a negative impact on somebody's health. Jordan, I don't know if you just want to talk about some of that, about some of the negative things that we are seeing within environments or within people's homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I say, we're sort of getting some preliminary results in, and we are seeing that there are homes that are suffering from damp and mould. There is the classic British stiff upper lip. And people aren't always willing to come forward and ask for that help that they need. So what we're able to do is let landlords know who are having issues with their home, whether it be damp and mould or whether it be fuel poverty, for example. And that means that the landlord can target those individuals to help them in any way they can.
Cool. I know indoor air quality is a big topic at the moment, so I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what you've learned about that.
Absolutely, yes. So we use carbon dioxide as a proxy for indoor air quality. It's really good at showing what other pollutants there are in the air that you don't really want to be breathing in. We've been showing that CO2 levels in the residents' homes to the residents for the last month or so, and we've really seen a drop in some properties of that CO2 level. We've had lots of conversations as well about the acceptability of technology within the home. One resident in particular I'm thinking of has talked about the fact that at the start of the project they would not have even considered letting us have a CO2 sensor in the bedroom, which in Scotland is now part of the legislation. But now she has seen the data and she has seen the value of it and what it can do for her, and she said that actually she might consider it in the future. So that elasticity of acceptability of technology is really interesting to see it in real life.
Yeah, I think it's just natural to be a bit cautious of things you don't understand initially, but we should get a little bit more understanding. I think indoor air quality has been brought more into the mainstream media. I suppose people are a little bit more aware of it, and especially when it's in your own home. Next, it'd be great to just talk about just your experience of smart homes so far. So it'd be good to hear your experiences with smart homes so far, Richard.
We adopted our first technology about 5 or 6 years ago, actually. It was solar PV that we had across a whole selection of properties, and we were going out and taking the readings as part of claiming for the feed-in tariff. And what we did was changed over the meters in the properties and put in a data link back to the office so that we could do an online submission. It meant that we didn't have to go out to the customer's home every quarter, and we also got diagnostics and reports back when the solar PV had failed. That was kind of quite revolutionary at the time for the business. We probably didn't make the best of it, I would say, in terms of the repair side and being preemptive, but it certainly got us on a sort of roadmap to kicking off with that. And then we've tried more recently with Aico's detectors, and we had the case where we had an alert going off in a property with the carbon dioxide sensor, and we actually found out it was the customer that had brought the motorbike into the kitchen, and they were servicing the bike in there, and that's what had been setting the sensor off. So yeah, you just don't get that insight without having the sensors in there on a normal basis.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard that story, and you really couldn't make it up, could you? Carbon monoxide alarm activating in a kitchen. And bearing in mind at that stage, it was when the technology had first come out, and we'd only just installed it in 6 homes.
Yeah.
So there wasn't even that many. So it does lead you to think what's happening in the other 15,000 homes, doesn't it? But yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think your first point about the solar PV, it's really interesting to see how technology is kind of starting to prove that return on investment, and the big piece of that is reducing visits to somebody's home. It's the cost of getting somebody in a van, sending it out to a property when we can get information from the property without sending somebody there. And it's also then the service we're providing to that resident, because they're not needing to be in to let somebody in, and that whole process of no access and all that is costly to social housing, and it's a cost now with technology we can start to avoid. So same question to you from Leeds City Council, what experience have you had with smart home technologies so far?
We're still quite early on our journey. Obviously we're part of this project with HomeLINK and Aico, and it's working really well, and it's giving us some really interesting insight. I think where we want to be is, as you suggested, that idea of why can we do this remotely? Do we have to send somebody? Especially when you cover an area as large as Leeds, you know, it can be a half an hour, 45-minute journey if you're from some of our depots to some of our properties. So what we want to do is minimise those journeys when we don't need to go, or where we think there might be an issue but we don't know what that issue is, and maximise the amount of times we fix things right first time. So we're setting off knowing what we're going to find when we get there, and not having to do a repeat journey, you know, wherever possible, not having to do a repeat journey. I think there are lots of things we'd like to look at. There's a few things we've trialled, but I don't think we've cracked the 1 or the 2 or the 3 that are the absolute ones that we are going to go, yes, these are the ones we're going to set out at scale. I think we're still looking at certain things. We've had, you know, the sort of the ones we've got at the moment in properties. We've also got some sort of other ones in properties that are more in the service areas, the non-public spaces, including some where we've got door sensors on tower blocks. Yeah. So we know if people are going on the roof, because we've had a few issues with people going on the roof of a 20-storey and things like that. So we are investigating them, but I wouldn't say we've decided these are the 3 we're going to go with, or these are the 5 we're going to go with. We are still trying to understand what will give us the best value from the ones we're looking at.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the point of the project, isn't it? We've put in 270 homes, then we need to monitor the results from that, and then feedback, and then look back at that return on investment calculation and say, is the return on the investment ultimately? Next, it'd be great just to talk about the landscape of smart homes within social housing within the UK. I don't know, Jess, do you want to talk a little bit about that first of all?
Yeah, I think we've seen quite recently that the landscape is changing. I think before, a lot of smart homes technology was focused very commercially or industrialised, but we're seeing that shift now to more enterprise IoT that is designed specifically for landlords. So I think it is becoming a bit of a buyer's market for us at the moment, and I think we are able to put more pressure on suppliers, and I think the shift is happening now where IoT suppliers are understanding the need for agnostic platforms, open IoT, that will allow us to integrate those processes into our current business systems rather than having to use their specific dashboard and locking us in. So I think we are seeing that shift at the moment. So I think for us as a landlord, it's a very exciting point to be involved in smart homes.
Yeah, I think exciting would be the word that I'd say. It's all very new, which is incredibly exciting. I don't know, Dan, if you from Leeds side, if you want to add to that.
Well, I think I'd echo what Jess said. Really, I think it is a really good time to be getting into this. I think the opportunities are expanding. I think it's probably something we've looked at in the past, and either the more sort of consumer steer of the technology has meant that it wasn't really suitable to sort of install at scale, whereas I think it's moved on now. And it's more a case of actually what are the things you want to focus on, as opposed to there isn't something that's provided that will let me do this. So we need to tie down the key ones that are going to help us now, whereas before it was very much, well, you can do this, but that's it. This is your option for an enterprise level sensor is this, and that's it. Whereas I think what we haven't got is that understanding of, we're probably too early to understand the reliability and things like that, and which sensor is better over another, because they've not expended their lifespan, and so we're told the batteries last 10 years or whatever. We're not 10 years into this to know actually that was not true, and they only last 7. We're still at that point really where you can't perhaps judge one over the other.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of players in the market that maybe do have a consumer device which they try to adapt to that. There's quite a lot of limitations with consumer devices on predominantly that they've got to have Wi-Fi connectivity, and it's definitely not something that's within every social housing property, so therefore it's not really a applicable technology that you could use. So it's really trying to adopt that to a connectivity option that works within the current landscape, which LoRaWAN is an option in certain places, but it's not everywhere. We look at someone like Yorkshire Housing, and you've got houses all over Yorkshire. Yeah. So how would we provide connectivity to that? So there are definitely limitations with other devices. Just really picking up on your sensor point there about some of the batteries. I suppose from our perspective at Aico, I don't have to put this in there. We're looking at releasing, or we are releasing in a couple of months, the environmental sensors, temperature, humidity and CO2. I think our heritage in developing these sensors really should stand out, because we've been putting sensors in boxes with batteries for a lot of years now, and the batteries have been powering our battery-only detectors. So hopefully, we should start to see them when they come out, proving the longevity and that same sort of quality. And I think it's really what the market needs. It needs some reassurance that there are products out there designed specifically for social housing.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think the challenge for us as landlords is more looking at the noise out there. There's so many products out there, so it's actually sorting out which ones do we want to use, but also rather than finding a solution and then buying that, it's looking at our business objectives, what are our issues, and then finding the tech that's going to solve that, rather than the other way around, which I think is a pitfall that we've fallen down a few times.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I suppose just a bit more about the landscape, Jordan. I don't know if there's anything you want to add about the current landscape for smart home technology in social housing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an exciting time, going back to that word. There is an explosion of technology across the market that is becoming available. So, you know, for anything from electricity meters, connecting with smart meters potentially in the future. Boilers is a really big one as well. And there is just options just coming out from everywhere. So it's a really exciting time. And I think Aico and HomeLINK are in an ideal position to be able to utilise all of those technologies moving forward to give a one-stop shop for landlords to benefit the most from the data that can be collected from their portfolio of homes.
So we spoke a lot about the different types of technology and the landscape at the moment. It'd be really good to understand what benefits do you see from smart home technology. So we start with yourself, Dan.
Well, I think the first benefit, and that you touched on this earlier, Richard, was the fact that it will allow us to minimise the times we need to get into tenants' homes. I think, obviously, in the current situation, tenants don't necessarily want us in their properties at the moment, and who can blame them? And so, by being more prepared before we go out to do a repair, because we've got the data that tells us what we need to know, we can minimise those visits, and we can, as I said earlier, fix more problems first time round because we know what we're going to encounter. I think it will also help us target our resources better because we can focus on the areas that need us. So we'll be able to, rate issues that are developing and understand which are the urgent, which are the, get to them next kind of thing. So be able to grade them and deal with them in that way.
Yeah, no, interesting, thank you. And same question for you, Jess.
Yeah, I would echo some of the things that Dan's been saying. I think for us, it's not only will IoT devices give us more data, it will also enrich the data that we already have in the business. So it is making us make more better informed decisions, so we can do those prioritizations that Dan mentioned, but also that's how we're going to drive innovation in the business with that information. So I think for us, that's one of the main reasons for looking into IoT devices.
Yeah, so just collecting more data and helping that inform your decisions going forward. Within social housing, compliance is a huge area, so it'd be great to understand just what benefits you see from smart home technology from a compliance perspective, Richard.
Yeah, managing health and safety of the stock at Yorkshire Housing, we've got the properties and the schemes that we manage. Historically, we'd go out and do checks on the schemes to manage Legionella in the properties, and the sensors now allow us to do that remotely. We know if the water supply is safe. We know by the sensors if we need to get out there and undertake a repair. So that's just one example of how we've transformed more recently. The other is that having the sensors in there, we know what kit is in the property and what is being alerted, and is it the right kit in the home. Yeah. So we can make sure that our contractors have installed the right specification with the data that's coming back on the dashboards.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because if you were having to send a surveyor out to check that the work's being done correctly, it's again another visit into those homes, which is what we try to avoid, because that's where the cost is and disruption for the resident. It's been a big thing for fire safety, being able to connect up your fire detectors through a gateway for exactly that reason. Landlord being able to check from the office when a system comes online what detectors are installed, and then ensuring that they remain installed. If the tenant was to tamper with them, take them down, that property would be no longer compliant or up to British standards, but we'd be able to get all that information from the office.
Absolutely.
I'd add to that as well, with the fact that with the compliance is a lot about health and safety. With the connected fire alarms and our resident app, the HomeLINK app, that's going to allow residents to understand what's going on in their homes to do with fire safety as well. So they'll be prompted to test their alarms, and that it's recommended that you test your alarm every month. Who actually tests it every month without being prompted? Everyone, I forget. I think most people would forget usually. So that prompt is going to improve safety within people's homes as well.
It was great to hear from Daniel Little, Jordan and everyone at Yorkshire and Leeds Housing. It's great to see Leeds leading the way in innovation when it comes to the smarter home and also creating a healthier home. As I said earlier, this is the part one of a two-part segment. But right now we're going to go to a short break and we'll take a look at our 3000 series.
Welcome back to Aico TV. For our second segment of today's show, we're going to be joining our Operations and Learning and Development Manager, Lee Duffy, and he's going to be taking a look at the impact that COVID-19 has had on our industry. So he's going to walk us through the impacts and the measures that have been taken throughout the pandemic and within the distribution networks to ensure that our sector has been able to continue through these unprecedented times. He is joined by some guest speakers. We've got Andy Crockett, who's the Managing Director at TWC Parcel Collection Services, David Brown, Managing Director at UPN, Colin Rann, Operations Director at APC, and Lydia Hopley, who's QHS&E Administrator at APC. So let's join them and see what they've got to say.
Hello, I'm Lee Duffy, Operations Manager for Aico. Today we're going to look at how COVID has impacted our entire supply chain. We're going to start here at our warehouse in Oswestry, and then we're going to work through to our pallet and parcel networks. We're going to look at the challenges that COVID has given people and how they've overcome them.
Good afternoon, I'm Matthew Hodgetts. I work here at Aico as part of the operations team. Aico is the market leader in fire and safety products. And during the pandemic, it's been a really challenging time for us all here to make sure our customers get their products to them when they need them. And to do this, we've had to stay open through the pandemic throughout. We have several deliveries each day. And during the pandemic, we had to lock down our warehouse, making sure that there was only one driver coming in at one time and to make sure that they were wearing their face masks. As you can see behind me, the pickers are wearing face masks to prevent contamination. We've also put lines on the floor for social distancing purposes, and we've changed the way we park our trolleys to prevent crossover. We are now in the packing area. We have changed our worktops to dry wipe services, and these are cleaned before, during and after shift. We've also rearranged our packing stations to make sure that we work back to back where possible. If we can't do that, then we put in a COVID screen to prevent contamination when we're face to face. With all these measures in place, we've been able to work for the pandemic.
Hi, I'm Andy Crockett, Managing Director of TWC Parcel Collection Services. We're a Shrewsbury-based distribution business that have been working with Aico for approximately the last 4 to 5 years, providing a premium service on palletised and parcel distribution. When COVID hit in late March, we were faced with two stark different challenges. One on the parcel sector, which had unprecedented volume, and the pallet networks as automotive and manufacturing industries closed down, where the volume dropped off a cliff to the other side. The challenges that we had on the parcel side of the business were the obvious increased volume, but then we had to introduce COVID-safe procedures and processes, which made our job even more challenging, and mixed and coupled with staff having to self-isolate and obviously having anxiety as the virus was in the background. We found this quite challenging. However, we did every day, as things and rules change, we've got more and more used to working with the virus restrictions, and I'm very proud to say that the parcel side of the business continued to support Aico with its service. Pallets via UPN, we had to really juggle how we kept our workforce occupied. We couldn't just move them onto the parcel side of the business because it wasn't really their skill set, and there was still an offering that we needed to offer to businesses like Aico. As the country became used to COVID and automotive and manufacturing started to open up, the volume within pallets started to mirror that of parcels. There was a lot of e-commerce home delivery, and as we've gone through the last 18 months, we've kept the supply chain going with added problems, but with pure grit and determination, which is something I'm very proud of. Our strong relationships and partnerships with UPN and APC overnight have ensured we've kept the supply chain going. Couldn't have done it without them.
Throughout the whole COVID crisis, the pallet networks have remained strong. service levels have remained high, and we're here today to speak to some of their key stakeholders to understand what challenges they've faced and how they've overcome them.
We're here today to discuss the impact of COVID on the UPN network and its customers. My name is David Brown and I'm the Managing Director for the United Pallet Network. It's a difficult time for everybody, I think. Personally and professionally, COVID hit us all and none of us knew what to expect. The early days were a big challenge. Nobody knew how this was going to affect business and, more importantly for us, how it's going to affect the service and the volumes coming into the network. One of the most important things that we needed to do is to make sure that we kept everybody safe during this period. Not only our own staff, but customers alike. We were very fortunate through our IT systems that we were able to do this. With our Smart Pod, this allowed PODs to be accessed via our online portals without the need of customers having to sign physical paperwork. Also important was keeping our staff safe. We implemented our COVID plan of action, ensuring that we kept the 2 metre distance on site for all staff, face masks, etc., and keeping everybody's hands sanitised. The other important thing was also keeping our visiting drivers. We have over 250 drivers a night visiting site, and it's important that we kept them safe. Again, we're able to do this through our Smart Hub technology, a NAP that allows drivers to book on site remotely, allows them to go through the sort with instructions via their phone, and also allows them to download the manifest directly, again without having to have any interaction with staff. This again kept them safe and kept our forklift drivers safe. We also need to ensure that we kept our office staff safe, and again a plan of action was put in place to do that. The NHS played an important role during COVID. As known as key workers, they did a fantastic job, and one I believe that we are all grateful for. Also though, the logistics sector quickly followed, and we were quickly recognised also as key workers, importantly keeping the wheels moving across the country, delivering important goods to consumers, whether that be PPE to hospitals, allowing them to do their jobs, whether that be the DIY market that we saw a massive boom in with people being furloughed, working from home, and I really believe that by being able to deliver those essential goods to homes, allowing people to be active during a very difficult, challenging time, not only did we deliver, but I also think we played a big part in keeping the country busy, motivated, and more importantly, sane. One of the other impacts that we saw from COVID was an increase in volumes. Although a challenging time, the network rose to those challenges. And not only did we deal with those extra volume, but we managed to maintain the high levels of service that our customers have come to expect. Again, a very, very challenging period for everybody, which we rose to as a sector. And more importantly, I thank all my staff, all my members, and all of our customers for working with us, alongside us, in this very difficult, challenging time. What a sector to be in, what a challenging time, and what great people that we all work with.
This afternoon, we visit APC Sortation Centre in Cannock. We ship over 100,000 boxes a year through this very sortation centre. It was vital for us that this part of our supply chain stayed fully operational during COVID. Not only did they stay operational, but service levels remained exceptionally high, which was fantastic to see. Selling life safety products as we do, it's important that our service levels stay as expected. We're now going to speak to a number of key stakeholders within APC to see what challenges they've faced and how they've overcome them.
My name is Colin Rann. I'm the Operations Director for APC Overnight Limited. APC is the largest independent parcel carrier in the UK. We cater for 100 depots and 35,000 customers, predominantly in the SME marketplace. Here on site at Cannock, we have the National Hub warehouse, which is housed in a 120,000 square feet warehouse building. Head office facility, which accommodates HR, IT, sales, marketing and network services. Also on site we have a training academy and engineering block. that provide training and engineering support facilities for the hub site. So, early 2020, when it became evident that COVID was going to become a major issue for not only the country but for our business, we decided quickly to put our people first. We have always supported a stronger people culture within the business, and it was important, and it is still important, that we ensure the safety of our workforce whilst supporting the services of our customers to our customers. Traditionally, APC serviced the B2B marketplace, business to business. It was evident with the onset of COVID that we saw a greater demand for business to consumer activity. This meant that APC, its employees and depots had to apply agility to accommodate this change fairly quickly. With the onset of COVID, it quickly became evident that there was a greater risk of the safety and well-being to our workforce. We implemented twice daily meetings from senior management down to frontline management roles to ensure the safety of our workforce. Measures were applied to maintain social distancing, to add additional rest areas, implement internal track and trace, and we, where possible, out-based workforce that weren't frontline facing. We implemented all these measures in line with advice from local authorities and legislative guidance provided by the government. We make no apologies for taking a cautious approach in relation to COVID, and we will continue to do so until we're satisfied that the measures that we've applied can be relaxed. So, as we progressed through 2020, with the onset of additional B2C traffic, it was evident that volume growth was going to be significant, especially coming towards our peak, which runs from September through to December. We invested significantly in additional capacity here at Cannock, and our sister hub at Essendon, whilst applying additional measures to maintain the safety and service to our customers.
Early on in 2020, following government's advice, it became apparent that high temperature was one of the symptoms of COVID. To alleviate this, we introduced temperature checks on site. After doing some research, we found that there was two types of devices that we could use for the temperature checks, both handheld devices and wall-mounted devices. This prevented face-to-face contact between two people. Another one of our challenges was introducing PPE to the company. Over 6,000 face masks were ordered, but we realised that these weren't suitable for everybody. So instead of 2 kinds of face coverings, we've actually got 5. For staff that are coming on site who are unable to work from home, we've put many measures in place. We've got social distancing, open windows, floor markings, increased PPE, hand sanitiser, reduced numbers of office-based staff, reduced numbers in offices, and one-way systems in place. Being polite with a friendly greeting changed. No more shaking hands and no more physical contact. A friendly wave and a hello to the people that you've worked with, that's all we could do. To reduce footfall on site, we decided to displace part of our transport team to a dedicated cabin. This was separate to the main building. Our number one challenge was social distancing. How do we separate 400 members of staff but still keep the same productivity? And we did it well. 2 metre social distancing was introduced throughout the site, and we had it everywhere. Floor markings, wall markings, on the back of high-vis vests, and on the TV screens. We introduced many more cleaning measures, touch point cleaners and fogging. Fogging is an antibacterial dry mist that displaces over a larger area, and we use this throughout our offices, all our open areas and our vehicles. For staff clocking in, we removed our touch points and we introduced a swipe card system, and this worked really well. Our training academy continued to be used throughout the pandemic. We still had to maintain the same levels of training to more individuals. Social distancing was still of paramount importance even throughout the training academy.
So you've seen the challenges that COVID has given to our products journey. And now you've seen how, by working together, all parts of our supply chain have managed to overcome them. This has meant not only have we been able to deliver throughout the COVID crisis, but we've been able to build more resilient partnerships going forward.
Thank you to everyone who was involved in that session. It was really interesting to hear about everyone's experiences and how well the distribution sector has managed to navigate their way through the pandemic and continue to deliver their services. So right now we're going to take a quick break and we're going to look at our expert installer community.
Introducing the SmartLINK Gateway and Cloud Portal service from Aico. A new and innovative product developed with registered social landlords and housing associations, giving you complete control and reassurance when monitoring and maintaining your stock of alarms through SmartLINK Cloud Portal. Easy to set up, the Gateway is a roaming 2G GSM-based device, ensuring maximum connectivity possible without the need for local broadband or Wi-Fi services, increasing efficiency while remaining compliant with legislation. Featuring real-time alarm status, fault status, text alert and email notification capability for both fire or CO and fault events, as well as installation reports and replacement and fault reports. The SmartLINK Gateway and Cloud Portal service is your total solution for alarm maintenance and asset management. The smarter way to check your tenant safety at any time. SmartLINK, a revolution in tenant safety.
For the final segment of this week's episode, our relationships manager Tina Mystery sits down with Lord Porter of Spalding, a former chair of the LGA and the current leader of South Holland District Council. The pair are also joined by Rob Chilton, account executive at Kratos Communication. The group discuss the Hackett report, the Golden Thread, and Lord Porter's views on the changing landscape of the sector. Let's take a look and see how the group got on with their discussion.
I think just a bit of background of why we've asked for the interviews. I don't know how much you know about us as Aico and what we do. Just to give you a bit of background, so we're the market leader in fire and CO protection. Put that aside, but a lot of what we're doing is about giving back to the social housing sector. So we do work with 92% of social housing right across all nations. And what we are doing is looking at setting up what we call Housing Safety and Wellbeing Task Force. And as part of that, it's a thought leadership aspect and looking at the views in the sector on what's actually happening at the moment, which is why we wanted yourself to be interviewed, just to get that perspective, really. There's a bit of work that we're doing around some research as well, which may have been interest to yourself at some point as well.
Yeah, we'll certainly be interested to see what's coming through from everywhere, given the comments the last couple of weeks with the Morbid inquiry of the TMO in Grenfell. I've been second guessing some of what was coming out, and we've been checking the other London boroughs and a couple of the other cities. And I think the social sector has probably done less than it needs to cover itself in glory on how we deal with tenants and high-rise buildings.
And that will kick off my first question to you then. So my first question is, do you think there's been enough progress on fire safety? Let me ask that again. We're going to start that question again. Do you think there's been enough progress in terms of domestic fire safety since the publication of the Hackett Review?
No, but I didn't agree with everything in the Hackett Review either. So there were some things in there that could take forever to get done, and I'd still think that was too soon for them. But the kind of easy wins haven't been done because, well, I think because people have been frightened about tackling any of it because they can't tackle all of it.
And is that the message? Do you think that's the message out to a lot of people? Is it's taking a few steps at a time?
I think everything you can do that inches a building further towards being safe rather than being unsafe should be done straight away, rather than being able to say we can take this block of flats and fix it all in one go. If the only thing you can do is retrofit suppression systems, do it. If the only thing you can do is retrofit big alarm systems, do it. And just do whatever bits you can do and kind of worry about. For me, I know people are saying it's the cladding, but it ain't. It's the insulation, not the cladding, still in my mind. And if you can't strip it all off because you can't agreed a price, you can't get a contractor, you can't get scaffold, can't get all of the other bits and pieces. That shouldn't be an excuse not to tackle anything. And at the moment, there seems to be too many people not tackling anything.
And I think there are several challenges. You just picked up on a few there, which is about contractors and removal of. But is that the only challenges we have in terms of implementing fire safety?
No, there's got competing issues, haven't you, with buildings nowadays. So retrofitting old buildings has always been a compromise because you never get a perfect building because you've been doing retrofitting. So putting in automatic suppression systems that require intrusive work into an old block of flats is probably going to give you all sorts of problems with asbestos. So that's a pain in the backside. You've got, even if you fix the cladding and you fix the insulation, almost certainly all of your intumescent fire breaks, they won't work because the building was built out of plumb and the things you've been fitting to it have been perfectly square. So the gap that's 10 mil at the bottom as it should be could be 30 mil at the top, in which case the fire break don't work. So retrofitting anything is always less than optimum. And when you've got competing agendas, so the eco bring down the U value, what's the best way of bringing down the U value is cladding the building with petrol. It's crazy.
It is a bit crazy at the moment. You've got this net zero conversation going on here, building safety going on here, and you've got different teams in local government and housing associations all talking about different things, but at the end of the day, it's all about safety of residents, isn't it?
Trouble is, it's not, is it? Bringing down the U value of a building ain't for the safety of the residents. And there's been no real serious work done on those buildings that have been stripped. I argued a couple of years ago when we started stripping the social blocks that we should take the old electric bills and compare them with the new electric bills and find out what the actual difference was out of the tenants' pockets for having a building with cladding on it and a building with no cladding on it, just to see how much value was actually retrieved out of the work done for the carbon neutral agenda. Because a lot of the retrofitted buildings are as a result of the big six energy companies making sure that their money stayed their money.
What do you think to that, Rob?
It's interesting, and I mean, I was particularly interested, Gary, that you feel that there is that there were some weaknesses in the Hackett report's response to everything that's going on. I mean, just briefly, you know, what do you feel that was?
Well, it's things that are not workable, aren't they? It's like the row about peeps. You're not going to be able to do an evacuation plan for everybody who enters a high-rise building because you're not going to know. You know, and somebody who was given a flat, able-bodied, who become disabled and chooses to stay, how do you know as a landlord that that's happened? If they've got disabled visitors, how do you know that's happened? Buildings should be made safe regardless of the mobility issues of whoever chooses to go in and out at any given time. And I think if you focus purely on the current list of tenants, you lose sight of having the building as being as safe as it could be. So it's stuff like that. When I first, well, putting it bluntly, whenever the government decides to, of any colour, decides to do some commission into something, you can guarantee that it's designed to not do anything and not blame anybody. That's kind of how it's, or at least not blame anybody significantly. And I had a horrible feeling, given Judith's health and safety background, that we were going to get something that looked like you would expect it to look like. And when I first saw a draft, because I saw her first draft days after it was done the ministerial run round, because we were still at that point had a ministerial recovery group, I was massively impressed with what she'd done. Okay. And then when the final bit came out, I was underwhelmed.
Why?
Because there's a big difference between the original drafting that we saw and the final bit. The first drafting she did, I was expecting it to be lots of words and no action, or not lots of words and no action anyway. And she produced what looked like a roll of wallpaper to me but it all had a proper, it was organic and it flowed properly and you could see the logic to everything that was in there. I was massively well impressed when we saw the first draft. And then, like I say, when it finally came out, underwhelmed.
What do you reckon happened in between?
The usual.
I see. Mm.
It's quite a lot to read and take in, isn't it? Especially with the sections of, you've got 300 something pages in there. I think, and everyone's taking different aspects of it as well, aren't they? Some people are looking at the golden thread and some people are focusing on the resident engagement. And you've got the consumer engagement white paper coming out. There's quite a lot out there at the moment. It can be quite overwhelming.
But that's how government works. Feast or famine, it's always the same. They either give you not enough to work with or too much that you can absorb it all. It's always been the same, never changes.
What is it you think the industry could do a bit more of in order to help that move the agenda forward?
It's difficult to crack, isn't it? Because you've only really got, from a landlord perspective, 3 groups of people, haven't you? Well, 4, I suppose, if you allow the private renter market in the high-rise as well. So you've got owners, private renters, RSLs and us. So there are only 4 bunches of landlords or potentially 4 groups of people that need to be nailed down. And all of us have got a little club. So the councils have got the LGA, the NatFed look after the RSLs. There's a tenant something or other thing that looks after the private landlords. And most of the big developers all belong to HBF. So it should just be 4 conversations to come up with what are the top 10 things we can do. I mean, getting rid of composite fire doors be a good thing. Only going back to solid wooden ones, but they look as ugly as sin. But they're the only ones that work. So I've been the building safety for, since morning to Grenfell, talking to Saj. And every week that goes by, I think the world's got a little bit worse, not a little bit better. That's how bad it is. Every week we're uncovering the latest thing that just doesn't work or didn't work or could have worked if only it had been done differently.
It's started to feel a bit doom and gloom, isn't it? I think there's got to be light at the end of it all, surely.
I think there is, when everybody gets their head round that you're talking about in excess of 50 billion quid, I think, to even scratch the surface of where we are. And the government have been talking 1s and 2s, and the most optimistic of the pessimistic people is 15. And I think 15 is way, way undershooting the value of what we've got to be spending. I think probably the government would be better off cancelling Trident and HS2 and saying this is the money we're spending on building safety. It creates loads of jobs, doesn't it? It's not like it doesn't create jobs. So in terms of creating the work, it would create the work. So it would do that levelling up agenda stuff. It fits all of that. And then you kind of knock that out for the next 5 years. See where we are then. But we've got old buildings that have exceeded their shelf life and we've cobbled up some temporary arrangements to keep them going. Well, that's bad enough if you're on the ground, but if you're 20 flights up, that's a kind of whole different proposition, isn't it?
I think that's a whole different impact, doesn't it? I think you see what comes out in the press, etc. But your heart goes out to quite a lot of those residents, doesn't it?
But the press don't get it. The press are massively behind the curve. We were telling Channel 4 about 2 insulation manufacturers who were as dodgy as sin right in the beginning of the Grenfell stuff. And it was a couple of months ago, they actually caught on. That's why I argued the Morbic thing was the wrong way round. Morbic shouldn't have concentrated on London Fire's response. His first report should have been into product safety. That's where the issues are. We've got materials that are not fit for purpose.
I think it's just confusing. So, for example, you've got private sector landlord legislation, you've got something requirements for social housing. There's quite a lot out there at the moment. But surely
and you've got the confusion between building regs and fire safety. They're not always as easy to flow through. That probably, rather than focusing on the difference in the regs for tenures, it'll be the discrepancy in who's actually responsible for fire safety. So for me, I'd bung everything into building regs properly, because then everything that gets built to a standard. You shouldn't have to faff about afterwards figuring out whether something breaches another set of rules. And I think tenures are a problem. It's more the occupants of a building, isn't it? If you've got a multiple occupied building, it's going to be a lot more unsafe than a single family unit, regardless of whether the family unit's paying rent or paying a mortgage.
And I agree with you there, but I think it is the building regulations. You can see there's a whole notion of looking at what approved document B and approved document J and PLN and all sorts out there, but it is not reflecting what the current British standards are out there at the moment, are they?
Yeah, well, we've been threatened with a review of building regs since I think Eric was Secretary of State, so 10 years.
So have we done enough, and what do we need to do?
Well, in terms of the regulatory regime, we probably ought to have a clean start on going forward, but not one that impacts retrospectively, which is all the stuff with EWS1 forms now and what's crippling the London housing market, just because of the inability of people to understand that we're not supposed to retro apply regulations. So it's perfectly legal to build a 3 or 4 story building and put petrol on the outside of it. You're allowed to. The regs allow it.
Is that right? And should we be allowing it?
Well, whether it's right or not, it's what we've always done, isn't it? And if you're telling people they shouldn't do it in the future, that's a good thing. If you're telling people they've got to take it off of something that somebody else did in the past, that's where all the problems start. And that's where all of the grief is in the housing market at the moment. We've got a bunch of people who are claiming liability off of somebody else, known or unknown. Problem isn't just with all the new stock, it's with all the old stock.
I think that's a fair approach, isn't it? Looking at new stuff and just new documentation, new regulation, and it's the retrofit that is a massive challenge, and we're seeing that with net zero conversation. Because when you start speaking to HA and local authorities, and I think a lot of them are talking about buildings and demolishing and starting afresh, some are talking about cladding or creating energy efficiency measures that suit those buildings. But what are your thoughts on what we should do with the retrofit? Just leave it as it is, or what do you think we should do?
Clearly, you've got, if the retrofit improves the quality of the life of the people inside the building, it's a good thing to do. But if you're only retrofitting something to chase 0.2 U values or something, I don't see the point in it. It's like roof insulation. You could keep chucking insulation into a loft of a house, and every couple of $100 mil you put in saves less than the cost of the couple of $100 mil you're putting in. At some point, you end up putting in things that change the building for no benefit to anybody, other than allegedly to the planet, which nobody measures. What's the point?
Well, I think that's a valid point. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does raise a question as to how much some of the work that is going on in, I think particularly, social landlords, I use as an example, because as you know, Tina, I represent a council ward with quite a significant amount of social housing, a lot of which was frankly jerry-built 40 years ago in a city council overspill and has never been looked after properly. And they materialise every so often, shoving the odd bit of stuff on the outside or the inside. And you actually end up looking at it thinking, does that actually made that building any safer at all? When actually what they should be spending the money on is stopping the kitchens going green. And it is difficult because people come along and they do things and it all looks very bright and fancy. But as Lord Porter says, it doesn't sometimes achieve very much. So it's a balance, I think, definitely.
Well, Paul, Dame Judith Hackett talked about this cultural change. What is, in your thoughts, the culture change? What do you think that needs to change in the culture for everyone to be thinking about safety or agendas moving forward? What is culture change to you, and what needs to happen in local government or other areas?
Yeah, you've got it. It runs right the way through from starting off on a construction site, to kind of the attitude to using products on a site in a way that you would use them in a way of a factory. So building sites operate differently to any other place in the country, and they all generally operate the same as each other. So there's a different culture on a building site than there is to any other form of employment. So it's a massive change needed there, and you're not going to get it with the existing workforce, because for the existing workforce, it's too late. You need to build it into the new workforce, if only we were training a new workforce. Unfortunately, for the last 12 or 15 years, we've offshored our training regime to somewhere else in Europe.
And
so that's the first bit of culture change I think you need. You need to root out the really crappy social landlords, and there are a number of those, and that pains me to say it, but again, on an almost weekly basis, we're finding some right bad practice in social landlords, and that's same for NatFed members as it is LGA members, so that needs sorting out. You probably need greater criminal sanction for private landlords who deliberately set out to have substandard accommodation. You probably need greater penalties against bad tenants as well, who abuse a well-kept house, because they can quite easily unsafe a safe house, can't they? So you probably need greater sanction there as well.
There's two parts of the party, isn't there? You've got the residents on one side, regardless of what tenure, and then you've got landlords on the other, or owner-occupied. And I think there's a lot of...
Yeah, but we should all want the same thing, shouldn't we? Amongst other things, I do have a few houses that I rent out, and all I want is my tenants to be safe, secure, and good. And good includes paying my rent, because that's what I've got them for, and not upsetting the neighbours, because I bought a house up a street with other people up there, so I don't want them doing anything that upsets them. And that's all I want. I don't want to change my tenants every 3 months, 3 years, or 33 years. I don't even care whether they decide they want to buy the house at some point, because I'm quite happy to take the mortgage money off them and go and buy something else if they settle in long enough. So no landlord wants a high turnover of tenants today. It's not in their business interest. So if you keep a house in a good quality order, the chances are your tenants are not going to turn over that quickly. I don't see it as an all landlord thing or as an all tenant thing. There's a mutually useful arrangement if both sides respect each other's bit of it.
Totally agreed. I think, like you, that's all you want. Whether you're a private landlord or whether you're a social landlord, the same applies, isn't it?
Social landlords don't. Social landlords have had the making sure people are happy beat out of them. Now we've got to keep giving the houses, turning them over faster to get more people through. Social landlords are now kicking perfectly good tenants out of their houses because they had the cheek to have parents who died. We've ended that safe, secure tenancy. The government did that in the last couple of housing bills we've put through. Now we've got it. Social units are rationed. And that's wrong. They shouldn't be rationed.
I think, if I may, Gary, there's another problem with social landlords. I think Tina will just touch on the relationships between local government and social landlords later, but there is a particular problem that I've found between social landlords that are primarily based in one borough that have usually taken the stock from
LSVT landlords.
Yeah, as opposed to generally overspill or sometimes new build landlords who have stock all over a region, are totally vague and nebulous and very hard to find, and have non-existent relationships with local government.
With the tenants.
Treat their tenants appallingly. And there is no mechanism to address this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the kind of is, or at least should be, because that's, well, it's all sitting on Thingy's shoulders now as an ombudsman, but it used to be part of the regulatory regime. I mean, I argued when back in the Housing Corporation days to get rid of the Housing Corporation because it was just like eating money. I think then it was like 26 million quid to run an organisation that did absolutely nothing as far as I could figure out. And part of that argument was they weren't rationalising the numbers of RSLs that were in the marketplace. There's far too many with far too small stock holdings. And you know, if you've been through an LSBT, so you've got one social landlord with thousands of units, why have you got 35 or 40 others operating in the same area with 20s and 10s and 2s? It's just ridiculous. And that's all overhead that's being sucked out of it. So yeah, stock rationalisation and one major social landlord in a given geography would make much more sense.
And what would you think the role of local government would be in terms of ensuring fire safety?
We've got two lots, haven't we? We've got if we're a landlord, clearly we've got landlord responsibilities, but we've also got that kind of place protectors. So we've got two sets of duties that sit in fire safety.
Do you think there's quite a different distinctive role when you go into it in terms of local authority and local government and a housing association, isn't there? Do you see a difference between them, or are they the role of local government the same as a local housing association? Or
I think NatFed were behind the curve for a long time on building safety. And they certainly did seem, when we first did the first probably 15, 18 months after Grenfell, they were, everything with them would catch up. And with our more progressive landlords, we were in front of the curve in most places, which is why most of our buildings got stripped pretty quickly and their buildings got stripped a lot later. I used to object to calling them, when the government used to publish the figures and call them social units, I used to try and make them always tell me how many council ones are there and how many RSL ones are there, so that we had a separate running commentary on what was happening, because councils were much, much quicker at getting their buildings stripped off.
I think the role of local government is it can be quite different from housing associations, can't it?
Well, in terms of we've got all those extra things we have to do. You know, if you're a council landlord, you're not just a council landlord. You're still the custodian of the place. And RSLs aren't, they're just social landlords. The good ones, the really good ones, are better at having place ownership as well. But the average is just a social landlord.
So in terms of moving forward with fire safety, local government does have a distinctive difference, would you say?
Only in terms that it's a regulator as well as a landlord. The hardship is going to be in those areas without social stock, is trying to make sure that the council understands that it's got a number of other duties that don't include being the landlord. When councils started to transfer their stock out under LSBT, a lot of people thought they were getting rid of the problem. And they didn't. All they ever got rid of was the asset. They always retained the problem. That's why I never transferred my stock out. We didn't even go at tenant ballot.
Okay. Just on that thought, I mean, as you know, there's a big fad of, well, it's a fad, it's happening, of unitarisation at the moment, and district councils in rural areas being got rid of and turned into, you know, one or two west or east unitaries. Do you, and of course a lot of those districts have, like yours, retained their own social housing. How do you feel that might help with the situation in the long term? Do you think that might spur, you know, government to do what the things you say? What do you think?
What, unitarisation?
Yeah.
But LGR back off the table. That was on the table when Jake Berry was a minister. Rob Jenrick kept it on for a little bit. Boris took it off. So I don't know where we'll be. I mean, Rishi hasn't got pedigree in local government, so he doesn't understand why he knows we've got different systems that don't look right, but he doesn't understand that kind of mechanics of it. So he wouldn't, I don't think, if somebody went to him with a cunning plan that said, let's reorganise local government in the morning, it will save this much money, his starting place would be, all right, let's have a look at it then. He isn't wedded to the current structures. Rob's not wedded to the current structures because he hasn't got a pedigree in local government. So the current structures make absolutely no sense to anybody. But it is the system we've got. And the only people who defend it are the people who are in it. No, nobody from outside would defend the current system. But that's any of it. County councils. People moan about, well, it could be a county unitary. There aren't any county unitaries. They've all been broken into two. Wiltshire, that people often cite with James Scott, is two. Swindon's in Wiltshire. It's another unitary.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, they've just cut Northamptonshire into two.
Yeah.
Because nobody liked the county council.
Yeah. And they're going to do the same to Cumbria, although, of course, Cumbria want it to just be one big unitary so they can all...
I don't even know whether Cumbria will change. I think they won't get any agreement around the model and it probably won't change.
Yeah. Interesting.
Somerset will be the one, but then Somerset's already got unitaries.
Yeah. Do you think it will complicate, because obviously we are very much on the terms of building relationships between local authorities, landlords, industry. Do you think the process will help that, or do you think it'll just create more complications?
If it happened everywhere all in one go, then in the new world it would help it, because you'd be talking to a lot less people, because every council would be 450, 500,000 people. So considerably much larger units. Basically, you'd get rid of 2/3 of the people who are playing in the space at the moment. So it would make it easier. But for all of the time it's going on, it makes it harder because people are concentrating on it rather than on the doing bit of the job. Okay. So that's where the unitary debate gets in the way of things. And it also blocks a lot of the old good work where you could get a bunch of councils working quite cooperatively without any structure around it. So, like the Manchester model with 10 councils, in theory, if you want to sell something about building safety, you've only got to sell it once, because you just go to the combined authority and say, this is really good, you need to roll it out across everywhere. And they'll all talk about it. Whereas if you come over to Lincolnshire, you've basically got to have the same conversation 9 times.
It's interesting you mentioned, we look around the landscape and you can see all 4 nations in different ways. And it does seem like a bit of a horse race sometimes. You've got certain things happening in Scotland that seem to be more advanced than what we have in England. And then you look at Northern Ireland and look at Wales. Do you think?
Yeah, but we've got 4 separate systems of governance, and devolution in all 4 places was set up for a different reason. So the structures are different.
But do you think there's any
If you talk to Scottish councils, they're no more in favour of the devolution that they've got than the English councils are the flavour of devolution they've got. And if you talk to councils in Northern Ireland, who are nothing more than parish councils largely, they're not in favour of the devolution that they've got. And Wales, nobody even knows what the devolution deal is over there, because every couple of years they decide to change the structures. I've worked with all 4, with WLGA, Costlar and Nilga, and they've never, ever been happy about what's happened to them. It doesn't matter which flavour of local government unit, whether it's the red team running it or the nationalists or whatever, they don't like it because what they've got is suboptimal to what they want.
And if I was to fast forward 5 years on, we've come many years since the Hackett review already, but where do you see fire safety moving forward?
Well, Bill's just gone through Parliament for what it was worth, but if you look at the core of what the bill was about, it was about clarifying what was already there. It doesn't change a great deal. It's people's interpretations of what it meant that's created all the problems. So the EWS one, the insurance industry, the mortgage industry, everybody else who's mugging the tenants over in buildings. But it doesn't do anything to improve building safety. The building safety bill, if she mentions it tomorrow, which allegedly it's in the Queen's speech, but I haven't bothered following it, so I don't know whether it actually is in or not. But if it is, that bill is about 2 years of parliamentary time, which is a new government by then. So I don't know where that's going to go. But I did look at the original draft of the building safety bill, and that will get ripped to pieces in its parliamentary passage, because it's got loads and loads of defects in it.
So what's the solution? What are we going to do with fire safety in England?
Just keep carrying on, cobbling on, aren't we? I mean, they're just having that row at the moment of taking automatic suppression out of schools, new ones. By what stretch of the imagination would anybody think that was a good thing to do? That is absolutely insane. But that's us moving forward into the future. Build a new school and don't put automatic suppression in there. It adds pennies to the cost of a new school, and the cost of disruption. Even forget the people safety, which obviously is the most important part of it. But even if the school burnt down at night time with nobody in it, the level of disruption and anxiety it causes to all of the pupils in that school, with all of their work all being burnt through, it's just like nobody in there with their right mind would say taking out automatic suppression is a good thing to do. So no, put some more in. Don't take it out. Give everybody little personal sprinklers alone. Wherever they sit, they'll all get flooded. So whatever happens in the building, they won't get burned.
And there's a problem of retrofitting in schools again, Gary, because of course a lot of them were built in that sort of 1970s, single story job. And I was a governor once, and we did some renovation work, and we discovered that the roof cavity void was just a horrendous fire waiting to happen. And you wonder how many others.
Yeah, well, it's even worse than that now, isn't it? Because they've got autoclave concrete on a lot of them, and the stuff just collapses, so you ain't got to worry about it burning down because it falls down there. So I say that's kind of part about building safety. It just every couple of months the next thing turns up and it's even worse than you thought worse could ever look.
And that's it. I think when a fire occurs in a block, it's not just a physical element of a fire. It's the impact it has on frontline services, the impact on the mental impact, and the post-traumatic stress. And that's a cost, a hidden cost in the NHS that you don't see. But
we've got worse than that, haven't you? Around Grenfell, you've got all of the toxicity that's in the land around it now. That'll impact on people for generations, almost certainly. You've got all of the fire brigade who went to the fire. They were all breathing in cyanide and God knows what else. So at some point, a load of them people are going to start getting post-work illnesses. It probably end up being the new asbestosis, probably. And that's just going to get worse. And you don't even do that for just the people who were near the fire. You've got everybody who lives in a building that looked like that building are all going to go to sleep wondering whether their building is going to be the next building.
And that's the impact on mental health, and mental health having an impact on the NHS and those services. But we don't talk about them enough, do we?
It's kind of cost a fortune. The hidden cost of built successive generations, and it's not what I tried to explain to the opposition parties, this isn't about the Conservative Party. This is about all governments, at least since 1986 on fire safety, when they changed Part F, at least since 1986. But I can go back with failures from the 60s now that are still there. Every one of the parties has had its power at some point in those 60 years. Lib Dems only through coalition, but Labour and Conservatives have both run the country, and nobody has made it better. In terms of building safety, they've all done, for probably the right reasons as they were presented to them, the wrong things.
And it's about stripping back the politics and just putting it aside and looking at human beings, really, isn't it? And it's about creating safer homes and safer communities.
Yeah, for me, that's kind of, it's the root to all evil for everything else we do as a state. If you don't bring people up in decent, safe, secure, affordable homes, everything else is more expensive. Education is more expensive. Crime is more expensive. Health is more expensive. Putting the investment up front in the property that people spend their lives in will save the state a fortune.
And having stronger regulation, would that help then? As we talked about approved document B and everything else, but
yeah, it needs stronger but clearer. You shouldn't have to be able to read simultaneous documents to understand what it is you're supposed to be doing. It should be simple.
You don't need to be. Sometimes you breathe and live British standards. I mean, and you can converse around, but you've got to look sometimes at 3 or 4 different documents. I mean, like LACLs is one document. You've got to refer back to 5 or 6, and that's not right. How is it someone meant to understand that and make sense of it and deliver something that's going to create a safer home? We just need one strong regulation, don't we?
It doesn't even have to be stronger. I think it needs to be clear. People should understand when they're breaking the rules. And at the moment, lots of people can hide behind breaking the rules on the confusion that's in the system. We didn't realise it meant that.
So in terms of creating a clearer document, how do we go about doing that?
I'm the worst person in the world. I couldn't draft up things. I like all my information to come on one side of a sheet of A4.
But don't we all? It's
No.
like when you go to a restaurant, when you go to
No, we don't all like that. There are some people who like the world to be as very complicated as possible, which is why vets and doctors call all your bones by Latin names. But just in case you break one, they don't want you fixing it yourself.
I do love that analogy. But so it's about having something clear, cut, simple for everyone to follow, not just within England potentially, but other nations should be following and having consistency as well.
I don't care whether they do or they don't, but it would be daft, wouldn't it? If one country could come up with a perfect system, why every other country wouldn't just copy it?
And then in terms of, we talked about the Hackett Review, but the big part of the Hackett Review is resident engagement and resident voice. Do you think there's been enough done on that?
That's complicated though, isn't it? So Kensington Chelsea was run by a tenant management organisation, wasn't run by the council. So in theory, it had a tenant voice. Except for if you look at all the stuff that's coming out now, the tenant management organisation wasn't actually a tenant management. It was there to manage the tenants, not an organisation that was the tenants managing the building.
Do you think we got any more?
Tenants should have input into what happens in their homes. Councils should have input what happens in their houses, because there is a difference, isn't there?
And there is.
And that's where more engagement needs to be done, is what happens in their homes.
I think it's also, you mentioned that there's 2 parts of the coin, isn't there? There's one that's social housing and landlords, the other bit is residents. Do you think residents also need to be taking more pride in their own homes? And we talked about, as a landlord, you want to keep your tenants there. You want to make sure they're happy, they feel safe. But do you think residents and need to do more about creating their own pride in their own homes?
I can take you around council housing in my patch and show you properties that look a load better than private housing does. And that's clearly because we're good landlords and we do a lot of the work, but also because the people who live there have got pride in the place they live in.
But when I say pride, I mean pride in that in terms of their safety in their own home, like testing your alarms or making sure that the health and well-being is okay.
You need to build that in as part of a regular thing. But I don't know about you, but when I had my last house before we got here, I didn't have hardwired in smoke detectors. They were all just them battery things because it's an old 1970s house. I never checked them. The only time I used to do anything with them was when they kept bleeping because the battery was going out of the pictures. I never used to do like, oh, every month check your button thing to see whether it still works. I never did that.
Will you? Please.
No. Now I've got everything all wired in this one. This one's all singing, all dancing. If it goes up the pictures, I've got no idea how to fix any of it. No, that's the trouble.
So the future is optimistic, are we saying? Let's draw a line. Whatever comes in the future is done correctly. Whatever was there in the past, let's not totally undo. Let's look at the good, and whatever is bad, let's create more houses on this side, get people to move into houses that are safe, where residents feel safe and actually feel comfortable. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know whether that's what we're saying or not. I'm just saying that if we try to fix retrospectively everything that was broken and lose sight of making sure that everything that is built as good as it can be, they're two separate problems. And I think they should be treated as two separate problems. But I think if you try to retrofit everything to current standards, you end up creating the problems that we've got.
So does the Hackett review solve the issue, or does it create more?
No, it solves some parts of it and makes other parts of it worse.
So the golden thread's fine?
I like the idea of the golden thread on new stock. I think it's unworkable on old stock.
And thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Happy days. Pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just to thank, a note of thanks from us as well. Lord Porter of Spalding, to give you your full title.
Gary,
as we call you. Leader of South Holland District Council, former chair of the LGA. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today. You've been very interesting, absolutely fab. Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you very much, sir.
Have a good day.
Great segment there with the Lord Porter of Spalding. It was great to hear his views on the changing landscape in the housing sector and also his views on the Hackett report and the golden thread. Thank you to Rob Chilton from Kratos for his time, and Tina Mystery, our relationships manager, engaging as always has a lot to say. But now we're going to go to Holly with our frequently asked question.
Thank you, Alex. This week's FAQ is going to be delivered by our Product Development Executive, Samuel Marsden, and he's going to teach us how to remove a product from the SmartLink gateway.
Removing a product from an existing Aico SmartLink installation. On the SmartLink app, press View Installations. If your property does not appear in the list, press Search Installations, enter the UPRN, press Search and select it from the list. It will then return a list of all the products installed in that system. Press the Edit button, then press the Recycling Bin button next to the product you wish to remove. Then press the Remove Units button. Press Yes to confirm. It will then prompt you to factory reset all the products within the system by pressing and holding the house coding button till it flashes blue, and then release. Pressing Next when done. We will then put the units back into house coding mode by pressing the house coding button, holding till the solid blue light appears, and then release. We will then continue this through to all the other products. When the flash count across all the products matches that displayed on the screen, in our case 4, we will then press Count Confirmed, Finish, and then seal the gateway by pressing the house coding button until the light goes solid blue, and then release. The yellow GSM light will then come on to indicate that the new profile has been uploaded to the cloud. And that's how you remove a product from an EI SmartLink installation.
Thank you, Sam, for teaching us everything we need to know about removing a product from the gateway. But that is all we've got time for this week. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, Missing Link, then you can do. Every month we tell you all about our company updates and industry news, and we also do a roundup of Aico TV as well. So if you'd like to subscribe, please do so using the link below.
Yes, the link below. Yes, Holly, yes, we can put the link on the screen. But that is all we've got time for this week. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on the following social media platforms.
LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and TikTok.
Definitely TikTok. We definitely need more followers on TikTok, so please follow us on there, and we hope to see you again soon.